Sometimes I get a little confused with what songs, references. You ever get confused on this? You're kind of like, these references don't quite do it. Like, the rock, the anchor, you raise me up, you lift me up, you take me higher, you roll over me. I mean, so let's just look at this just a little bit here. I'm a practical guy. If it's abstract art, I look at it and like, wow, I've seen better stuff come out of my nose on a bloody nose day than that, you know. And so, you know, I just don't get it. I don't understand it. How can you have somebody come into you? Wouldn't you be dead? You know, I mean, that's just, something doesn't make sense. Wash over me. Well, if you get that's like taking a shower, right? I mean, if something washes over you, I've had, well, that's probably not an appropriate story, but rain down on me. Like, what does that mean? Have you ever been rained on inside of church? Well, yet we sing, we want to be rained on. Please rain down. What does that mean? Kylie was in Bolivia this summer with the youth at the Ultimate Workout, I think is what it's called. And they were singing this song, Holy Spirit rain down, Holy Spirit rain down, or something. Then all of a sudden it did. I mean, it started raining and dumping. And it was so much water, I think it rained, what'd she say, like 2 inches in like 15 minutes or something. The gutters were full, and they just got so full that they caved in, and they dumped down the wall, and the water was coming down the wall, and then it came into the church they were at, and then the floor got flooded, and so, yeah, maybe rain down on me works, I don't know. You take me higher. Does that mean like the airplane that we were in last week, was that a spiritual event? What does that mean? You lift me up. I mean, we're not elevated. I'm standing. How does that, the rock, Jesus is my rock. He's my, what's that mean? When you're driving on the road, out in the gravel road to my house, and you're driving on Christ? Sometimes it doesn't, I can't see him. I can't feel him. I can't touch him. How many have ever touched Christ? How many have ever touched the Holy Spirit? I mean, how many people have been touched by the Holy Spirit is a different thing.
Yeah.
I don't think, how do you deal with that? How do you get your mind around that? Does that bother anybody else? I mean, I don't see the wind, but yet I see the effects of the wind. I can get that. But, I don't know, bothers me a little bit. Our scripture for this morning, we've read it already. Our main text also deals with this same issue. Here I am, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and eat with that person and they with me. How many people have read that before? How many people have claimed that promise before? How many people have had lunch with Jesus? No hands.
Every day.
So we got a disconnect here. Something's not, I mean, if we've read that before, we've claimed that promise before, but it hasn't happened, either it ain't true. You see what I'm saying there? There's a disconnect. There's a problem. I stand at the door. What door? Where? Where's the door located? Is the door locked? Where's the key? Is it a big door? Is it a solid door? Most of you probably recognize it, but you know, the door that's just right out there and around that's on the outside was rotten. And I don't know, a month ago or so, I put a new door on. So, is that the door he's talking about? Is he knocking on that door? Because the old one was rotten. It's in the burn pile at home or in the trash trailer. Then there's a new one now. Is it a church door? Is it a door of your house?
Where do you hurt?
And what about the voice thing? We talked about this. Hearing the voice of Jesus, responding to the voice of Jesus. What does Jesus' voice actually sound like? Is he female? Is he male? Is he high? Is he low? Is he a bass? Is he a baritone? So when you eat with Christ, is he vegan? Maybe he's just vegetarian.
With me.
You know, what do you eat? Do you eat lentil soup that is so famous in the Bible? Do you have the feeding of the 5,000 with the bread? What do you do when you eat with Christ and you open the door? That's what it says.
You welcome me.
So about 2 months ago, Sherry and I decided we were feeling pretty bad that our kids were gone. And after church, we left, took off for Lincoln, spent the afternoon, maybe we were in church with them, I don't remember. Spent the afternoon and evening with Sherry's parents in Lincoln. And I think we can spend the night there. But anyway, had a kind of good conversation. Nothing special, nothing great, wonderful. Any of you know Bill Ray or Jeannie Ray? Jeannie really, really likes to read. She reads probably more than anybody else I know. Anything and everything that's out there, she's probably read it. Bill, on the other hand, doesn't talk a lot, but when he does read something, it's kind of important. I mean, he usually kind of gets into it, and he's pretty knowledgeable. He won't say anything, he won't tell you anything, but you know, if he says something and you know, he engaged in a conversation, it's not because he doesn't know what he's talking about. So I'm standing there, sitting there on the couch, and I don't know why my slides can't advance here, but I can use one by one. So I'm sitting there on the couch, and you know, Sherry and her mom are kind of engaging in conversation, and this book is sitting there. And so I'm just like, oh, that's interesting. George Knight, I kind of knew who he was. And so as they were kind of talking about things I wasn't terribly interested in, I picked it up and started reading it. Have you ever know this? Have you seen this book? Kevin's the George Knight guy. Who's George Knight? You might know? George Knight? George Knight is the unofficial Adventist historian. He is a, well, I don't know, maybe he puts it on here. An influential voice in Adventism. He is an educator, historian, theologian, highlighted with the vibrant defense of centrality of Jesus and His grace. I'm not sure where he's at right now. I think he's actually retired, but he used to be at Andrews. Wrote many, many books. Not all of them were fully accepted by the church, the greater church. Most of them, however, were pretty straightforward. So I'm like, George Knight, can't get too wrong. So I start picking this up. Anybody ever know what this is? Ever heard of last generation theology? I hadn't. I'm like, this is last generation theology. You guys should probably familiarize yourself with that, because it was George Knight says, church historian, he studied the church since the founding of, 1844 to today, the biggest theological idea in the 20th century. He says it has shaped the church more than any other idea, the Adventist church, more than any other idea in theology since 1900. And so I'm like, what is this? What's going on here? What is this? I'll just read you a little bit here. And I, of course, forgot my glasses. Page 17. Over time, I've taken both positions. My initial glimpse of Andreasen took place soon after my September. I think this is right. My September 1961 baptism. Wanting to better understand what I had gotten into, I visited a Central California book and Bible house a couple of months after my turn from agnosticism. The first thing that I noticed of importance in this Christian Home Library series was being marketed as essential Adventist books. So as might be expected, the most published author was Ellen White. But I clearly recall the series, the second series, first and foremost by the author, a large margin, was M.L. Andreasen. Anybody ever heard of M.L. Andreasen? In other words, this guy's writings, M.L. Andreasen, were right next to Ellen White's writings in the Christian Home Library at the Book and Bible House in California. So certainly, I thought, that I must have something important to say to the church. Needless to say, I bought several of Andreassen's volumes, along with a dozen Ellen White's in that first bookstore visit. He was at the very early stage of becoming something of an Adventist hero to me. In the centrality of my life and my newfound faith, I soon became more and more prominent through that time. I had no idea that theology I was absorbing was related to Andreassen. But when I slaved away in the construction world, my wife began working at the Pacific Press Publishing Association, located in Mountain View, California, which I used to live there. As soon as she became under the influence of a camaraderie of older workers who were greatly exercised over their final generation perfection. Betrayal in 1844 on whose ideas related to the human nature of Christ. Before long, I was captivated by their theological perspective. Pretty good quote here. I still remember the impact of Christ Object Lessons, page 69, on my life. Christ, I read, is waiting with long-standing desire for the manifestation of himself in the church. This is in quotes. Christ Object Lesson, page 68. When the character of Christ shall be perfectly reproduced in his people, then he will come to claim them as his own. When the character of Christ shall be perfectly reproduced in his people, then he will come to claim them as his own. What does that mean to you? When the character of Christ becomes perfectly reproduced in his church. Andreassen made a whole school of thought, of theology, that we don't need Christ. Can you believe that? We're going to be perfect. Based on this one verse. When the character of Christ shall be perfectly reproduced in his people, then he will claim them as his own. So it goes on a little bit more, but essentially, last generation theology talks about working out perfection in our lives. Here I am, a brand new Adventist. I go to church. I get raised, Adventist. Little guy, and they talk about the law. They talk about, what it means about the law. Old Adventist, legalism stuff. I'm like, man, our church has maybe kind of had troubles with that. My dad gets started into Jones and Wagner of 1844. In 1844, Jones and Wagner got into the idea that we are saved by grace, not by the law. Fast forward the clock another 80 years, Andreassen comes up with the idea of last generation theology. Last generation theology. Is that what it means? Is that what we're supposed to, is that what the Holy Spirit rained down on me means? Is that what it says to be the rock? Last generation theology, to be the rock, to be, what does it mean to have Christ in me? What does it mean? Is that what it means? I'm perfect now? Somehow I have the perfection?
You have it imputed to you at this
time. I'm going to read just a little bit more of this, and I'm not going to perseverate. If you want to really get into this book, it is very interesting. George Knight goes on here, page 18. Consequently, by the winter of 1961, 1962, I'd become a firm advocate of the final generation theology. I still did not understand Andreassen's relationship to that theology, but that would soon change. In 62, went to PUC, began studying the Questions on Doctrine. Questions on Doctrine, which basically was the Adventist church response to the Andreassen idea. End-time events, sinless perfection, etc., etc. Middle of page 18. Thus, my pro-Andreassen last generation theology years, thus began my pro-Andreassen last generation theology years, but they came to an abrupt halt in March of 1969 when I finally realized that last theology generation did not work. After 8 years of striving, I was still messed up. Beyond that, I hadn't even met one perfectly sinless Adventist. Is that what it is? Is that what it means to have this wave go over you, be baptized by the water, to be, to have raised up, to be elevated? Last generation theology, is that what it means? So after that, I picked this book up. I got through most of it. I haven't got through the whole thing yet. I started reading another book. This book is a small little book. Anybody ever see this book or read this book or anything? This is by Claire DeGaff. I don't know how you say his name. Kylie gave it to me. It takes you maybe about an hour to read the whole thing. I mean, it's like that big, maybe 100 pages, 75 pages. I said, fine, I'll just read it. Yeah, read it a little bit. 10-second rule. The whole idea behind the 10-second rule is this guy, Claire DeGaff, is a ordinary, average guy trying to get the Holy Spirit to rain down on him. He's trying to fulfill the Christian walk. He's trying to do his thing. He's trying to... And then he realizes that there's a filter. Every time he thinks he should do something, his brain says, well, are you sure you want to do that? Is that person really deserve? Do they really mean it? Should you really help that? Should you really give that? And he says, I had this idea that if I stop and think about it for more than 10 seconds and don't react, I won't react. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. He's like, there's something about it. He says, you just try it. You see that person in the grocery store and you know they're kind of having troubles. So he has the idea. So this woman in front of him in line is in a grocery store. She obviously has little kids. She's got a baby in the cart with the little stroller, the little baby carrier there. She's got another one on this leg. She's got another one over here. All of a sudden, the third one dashes off while she's trying to pay for her groceries off to the who knows where. And so she's flustered. She's trying to get everything done and paid. Then she can't find her credit card. Dumps the entire purse onto the cash register or machine there. She's rifling through it, can't find it. This kid's crying, that one's running out over there. And so he taps her on the shoulder and then gives his card to the checker. Didn't even think about it. This woman just was so grateful. He says, I'll watch your baby, I'll watch your toddler. Go chase down that 3-year-old and get him back in the cart. Your groceries will be fine. I'll help you out. And she was just so great. Never met the guy before. Never met the guy since. 10-second rule. He says, if you want to know what Christ wants you to do, find the most reasonable thing He wants you to do in 10 seconds and do it. Is that what it is? Is that what we're supposed to do? Here's another guy. Matthew 14, 22 through 30. You may know what that is talking about there. Grab your Bibles and read it, just for grins. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead to the other side, while He dismissed the crowd. He had dismissed them, and He went up to the mountainside by Himself to pray. Later that night, He was alone in the boat and was already a considerable distance from the land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. Well, now we're starting to get to that raise me up part. I'm like, well, okay, maybe that's, you elevate me, you raise me up. Okay, we're getting there. When the disciples saw Him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, don't be afraid. Peter, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come out onto the water. Jesus says, come. Peter got down out of the boat, started walking on the water towards Jesus. Anybody ever walked on water? I have a very cool picture where it looks like that I'm walking on water. It doesn't work very well to walk on water, but the picture is cool. So I'm running. So Platte River is here. The bank kind of goes down. So I'm running, and then I jump into the water. And it's, I don't know, that far from the dirt, the shore, whatever, sand. And if you take a picture while I am in a high-speed resolution, if you take a picture while I jump up, it will snap just about the time that you land under the water. And I have a picture of me going like this, both feet essentially standing on the water, right before the water is about ready to depart. And it looks like I'm just standing there right on the water. It took a long time to get the shot, but it looks pretty cool. It looks like I'm walking on the water. That's not what's going on here. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come onto the water. Come, he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked onto the water, and came towards Jesus. But then he saw the wind, and he was afraid, and he began to sink. He knew what to do when he started sinking, didn't he? Lord, save me! Immediately Jesus reached out his hand, caught him. You of little faith, he said. Why did you doubt? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe we're not walking on water because we don't have as much faith. Maybe we don't get raised up because we don't have faith. And when he climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. Is that what it means? Less than 10 seconds, boom, Peter, he's out in the water. Is that what it means? Ellen White talks about this little event here. A violent tempest had been stealing upon them, and they were unprepared for it. It was a sudden contrast, for the day had been perfect, and a violent gale struck them. They were afraid. They forgot their dissatisfaction, their unbelief, their impatience. Everyone worked hard to keep the boat from sinking. But a short distance from the sea, from Bethsaida to where the point they were expected to meet Jesus, it was an extraordinary weather the journey required, but for a few hours, they were even driven further. Now these are guys that are used to working with boats. Most of their life, they had figured out how to row a boat, how to deal with the sea, how to deal with the wind and the waves. Farther and farther from the point they sought, until the fourth watch of the night, they toiled at the oars. The weary men gave themselves up for lost. The storm, the darkness, the sea had taught them their own helplessness, and they longed for the presence of their master. Jesus had not forgotten them. The watchtower on the shore saw those fear-stricken men battling with the tempest. Not for a moment did he lose sight of his disciples. In the deepest solitude, his eyes followed the storm-tossed boat with precious burden. For these men were to be the light of the world. As a mother in tender love watches her child, so the compassionate master watches his disciples. When their hearts were subdued, their unholy ambition quelled, and their empty humility, they prayed for help, and it was given to them. Desire of Ages, page 381. As soon as they realized their own weakness, as soon as they realized their own inability to save themselves, Christ comes. But still, there's a lot of metaphors in there. Their own weakness, their own disability. Yeah, they weren't fighting against a real event. It was waves, it was wind, it was water. If you don't stay above water, you drown. Why did he do that? That doesn't make sense. The guy's been on the boat all his whole life. He's been on the water. He knows what happens. Boom, there he goes. Doesn't even think. Is that what we're talking about here with some of these metaphors? This is Ravi Zacharias. Ravi Zacharias. Jesus Christ didn't come to the world to make bad people good. He came into the world to make dead people alive. To make dead people alive. So what does it mean? What does the metaphor mean? Christ inside of me. You know, I give stuff to people all the time. And sometimes people get a little confused. You're going to give me what? Is that a drug? Is that a pill? Is that an injection? You know, I mean, when I was in med school, working with the ER docs, I wanted to do ER first, and then I decided that anesthesia was much more suited to me. I remember this ER doc. I says, well, I think I want to do anesthesia. And he says, what? Why would you want to do that? All they do is stick plastic in people. I'm like, well, yeah, maybe you got a point there. There's not much happens that we don't, start IVs into treacle tubes, chest tubes, lines. There's always something PVC going in a patient when I'm around. So Jesus Christ didn't come to the world to make bad people good. He came into the world to make dead people alive. Ravi Zacharias. Does that have something to do with what we are to be as Christians? Is that what we're supposed to be doing? Raising people up, making people alive? So last week, San Francisco has this cool little history. The history of the bay goes way back. Anybody know what this little island right here is?
Alcatraz.
Alcatraz. How many have been there?
Been around it.
Been around it? Been near it? What's the history of Alcatraz? What did Alcatraz, well, I mean, as far as we know, Alcatraz started out as a military outpost. I mean, before that, it was a pile of rocks. It's 47 acres of solid rock. The military came so Kevin's going to cringe here a little bit. Somewhere along about World War II, we had some issues with our Western defenses, and we're like, wow, we really need to shore that up a little bit. And so military came in there, and they said, wow, this is a great opportunity. We can protect the entire harbor if we put a couple of big cannons right on the top of that rock. And so they came in with big blasting bulldozers, and this 47 acres of rock became a military outpost. It was kind of cool. If you look at the pictures back then, there was like, cannon, these big piles of cannonballs. I mean, there were just rows and rows and rows, You can't really go get those at the hardware store, so you got to store them on the island, and there's no real buildings and all that stuff. So that's Alcatraz. What else was Alcatraz?
Prison.
Is a prison. Anybody have an idea of when the prison was started? Prison was started, it was military prisoners. They'd send them to Alcatraz because they knew they couldn't escape. There was really no buildings or nothing there other than just military base. And they would send bad military people there after the war, and they said, go ahead, try to escape. Well, that turned into a little bit more intensive, barracks and prison cells, and then, for a couple of decades at least, it was pretty intensive prison yard.
Unescapable, they said.
Yeah, except for, you know what? One guy escaped. And we took a picture of him. There he is. No, I don't know. I have no idea. So we're walking down on the boardwalk, and I'm looking at this picture. Sherry's like, what on earth are you taking that picture for? I'm like, I don't know, a little weird maybe. So here's Alcatraz. This is as we were getting a little closer when we took the Alcatraz tour. As you can see, the island itself has this kind of unified fortress right here. This is basically military housing that was later converted into prison warden family housing. There's some industrial, generation stuff, some more plant buildings. There's their water tower. This right here is the prison. That little guy right there used to be a church mission kind of building before it kind of got destroyed. One last little piece about Alcatraz, and then we'll go on. Alcatraz is obviously not going today. Do you know what happened to Alcatraz after they shut the prison down? It's interesting. So along about the 60s and 70s, in America there was a lot of free love and togetherness going on. And in addition to that, the Native Americans in San Francisco kind of took that to the extreme, and they took over Alcatraz. And so I had no idea, but for 19 months, Alcatraz was a land of the free, home of the brave, so to speak. It was a Native American compound that was run by the Native Americans, Indians. I mean, no matter what tribe you were from, no matter what you were there, they'd welcome you, and you come by a boat or canoe or whatever, and you could be part of the Alcatraz compound. So you get on the boat, and then you get a little bit closer. They come to this little dock. You jump off the boat, and you can go anywhere on the island. You can walk all around. I mean, the tour guide says, "Go nuts." And I'm like, "You mean there's no off limits?" He's like, "No." I'm like, "It's only 47 acres. You can walk around the whole thing in 10 minutes." So they gave me a little audio tour here, and you can see my little audio headphones, and I'm just got a great, wonderful expression. So this is Alcatraz. I think this is Michigan Avenue. These doors automatically open and close. You have, if you can see it here, you have a cot, you have a toilet, you have a sink, and on that wall over there you have a little fold-down TV tray type deal. It's probably 8 foot by 10 foot, the cell, something like that. I'll get a little bit better picture here. So get your camera right down through the bars. You can see in between the bars, you can see there's the little cot, there's the toilet, there's the sink, there's a little shelf up there. I should have took a picture of it. One of the rooms actually had what a typical prisoner would look like. They had, tin cups that they would have, and it was not uncommon for the Alcatraz people to rake the cup across the bars in some kind of a certain code. I don't, So anyway, there's cups laying up there. They had a little bit of heat. San Francisco's cold. In Colorado we left, it was 68 degrees. We got there, it was 58, and then it dropped down into the high 40s. When we toured the islands, we left on the boat. I had a long sleeve shirt on, a t-shirt and sweatshirt, and yeah, it was sunny, kind of a little warm. Maybe it was, I don't know, 60, 65 on the dock. But then the wind kind of comes up. You get to the island of Alcatraz, and it's like 50-some. It's like really cold because all of that surf, wind, ocean spray cools stuff down. So they didn't have very much. It was cold. You got a little blanket. You didn't get any jacket or coat or anything like that as a prisoner of Alcatraz. Here's Michigan Avenue. You can see there's 1, 2, 3 on this side, and then there's more on this side. This actually is, considered like the highly desirable cell because the light would actually go in there, and you could light up your cell. Now, I wonder if there's something to that. Highly desirable means light comes in, So, maybe there is something like those. The idea that the Holy Spirit lights our path, Christ lights our world. So they would fight, they would kill to get one of these cells, so to speak, because they would be so desirable that they could actually have just a little bit of sunlight. You got 2 outdoor breaks during the week, 1 each hour, hour and a half. We could go outside. That's it. Bad people go to prison. Bad prisoners go to Alcatraz. Bad Alcatraz prisoners go to cell block D. This is where all the bad people are. Cell block D had the most famous prisoners in it. It's dark, it's desolate, it's depriving, a lot of death. Cell block D looks kind of something like this. All of these cells lined up. The doors are 18 inches wide. Then you go in, there's about 1.5 foot, and there's another set of bars. You were in there for, I think they said, what, a week at a time? Some people were there for months. No bed, no bathroom, no blankets, no pillow, no light. Water and food were through this little So yeah, so the guards would open this outer door here, and then they would get access to this. They'd set it there, and then they would lock this door, and then they would unlock the other door for a small amount of time. They could go get their food. This is all sealed up. No light comes in through there. The audio tour said something like, the hole, when I would go to the hole, I'd tear a button off my shirt, put it underneath my thumb, flick it up. It's completely dark. The cell is 8 by 8, and then I'd try to find it in the complete dark. I do that about 1,000 times a day, just to keep from going insane. Bad people go to prison, bad prisoners go to Alcatraz, bad Alcatraz prisoners go to the hole, cell block D. So let's bring this back around a little bit. What does this have to do with Christianity? What does Alcatraz have to do with Christianity? Alcatraz a good place? Do you want to be in Alcatraz? No. What do you think those are right there? In 59? So somewhere in there. So I want to say somewhere in there. There was a group of prisoners in Alcatraz that, interesting story, we'll just take 2 minutes to discuss this. They made a bolt, and they had a wrench, and the bolt had like little kind of things that would basically spread the bars, and they cranked the bolt, and it would spread the bars, They cranked it enough so that they could jump up to the second story where the guns were stored, got a skinny guy to get in there, got the guns, took over control of most of Alcatraz for about 2 or 3 days. During that time, all of the wardens were out. The prison was essentially on lockdown. Nobody's going in, nobody's going out. The only place in or out was in this central corridor, which is between Michigan Avenue and the other cell block. And there was some ventilation chambers up there. After about 3 days, the military said, enough of this, we're going to take control back of Alcatraz. They came in there. Most of the convicts who were in control were in that room, threw a couple of grenades, and that's what happens when a grenade hits the floor and explodes in Alcatraz. The only true non-controlled time in Alcatraz where people were trying to escape. What if it's not a prison? What if you think about this? What if it's you and me that's in there? And the prison doors are not locked. More metaphors here. What if this is us? What if we're in here and the bars are closed? All you got to do is open them. But what if when you get out, you have to go to the warden and you have to apologize. You have to admit that you are no longer going to do what you did to get in there. You know what? You know what the view looks like from Alcatraz to San Francisco? That's what it looks like when you're standing at the top on the front of Alcatraz. You see this gorgeous view of the city. San Francisco Bay is there, San Francisco Financial District. You see the nice long bridge. To the back, to behind you, is the famous red San Francisco Arched Bridge. This is the view. What if all you had to do was just say, hey, I'm sorry, I apologize, I was wrong. Prisoners said they used to look out over the bay, and on the 4th of July they would love seeing the fireworks shoot off over the... it was especially a high day when the wind was just right and they could hear some of those voices coming across the bay. You could actually hear people talking who had parties down at the harbor. But what if that was us? What if that was us in the prison? What if the prison doors were shut and all you had to do was open them, is go to the warden and say, I'm sorry. from now on, I'll follow you. I'll follow the rules. I'll follow what you want me to do the rest of my life. Isaiah 61:11, the Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, proclaim freedom for the captives, and release from darkness the prisoners. John 8:36, so if the Son sets you free, you are truly free indeed. 2 Corinthians 3:17, now the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. Galatians 5:11, it is for freedom that Christ sets us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by the yoke of slavery. Galatians 5:13 and 14, my brothers and sisters, we were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge your flesh. Rather, serve one another in humility and love. For the entire law is fulfilled by keeping this commandment. Love the neighbor as yourself. Is that really it? All you have to do is just love your neighbor as yourself? You just have to throw the door open and say, I am here to serve? Is that really it? Is there no other price for freedom? Is that just it? Or is that just another metaphor? Alcatraz closed in 1963. Right across the harbor is the financial district of San Francisco. This is the street that runs right up in front of the Moscone Center. The Moscone Center is the center that we had the ASA conference in last week. This is another prison. There's no walls. There's no warden. What's that prison look like? Is it 8 by 8? Is there a D block? Is there a cell block? What's that prison look like? Are they truly free? This is the statistics about the homeless population in the town of San Francisco. Who they are, what their makeup is, why they are there. You know, this is from Hand Up, How Can We Help? That's not what I'm interested in. Where's the bars? If this is a metaphor, if this release is freedom, if this truly is a metaphor, then where's the bars? You know what that picture is?
Syringes.
Syringes of what? Used heroin syringes. This is the cleanup of one homeless camp. One homeless camp over a weekend. This is one homeless camp over a weekend. How many syringes do you think that is? Millions. A group of volunteers says we're going to get these AIDS infected, these hepatitis C infected syringes off the street in this homeless camp. That's what they got. One weekend. In 1 year, drug overdoses killed more Americans than the entire Vietnam War did. 65,000 people died last year because they were in prison. Because they chose this. There's nobody that put the needle in their arm. There's nobody that put the pill in their mouth. There's nobody that did that. That's prison. But the walls aren't there. So what is heroin? What are opiates? I mean, I give them to my patients all the time. Fentanyl, Dilaudid, morphine, you know. I mean, we use this stuff all the time. I mean, I can't do my practice without opiates. Why do people get addicted? Why do they want that? Addicts on the streets. We look at those and say, why? Why do you have that prison? Tear down those walls, put that up. There's freedom. I had a 4-year-old girl who needed an MRI of her arm. And so, brought her into Kearney Regional, and very, very nice girl, very, very nice family, bright girl, just, you know, but she's 4. Talked to mom, like, you know, we really need to get an IV started to get this thing done. And so, yeah, mom's like, good, she's pretty, you know, she's normal, she's a good girl. You know, distract her a little bit with the book or something, or TV, and put the IV in. You ever try to do that with kids? It is so classic. So, she's reading the book, and she's watching, she's smiling, hi, you're reading the book, smiling. I'm gonna look at your arm here just a little bit, okay? Yeah, so she's looking at my arm. I bring the ultrasound machine in because I want to hit it first time looking at it. She's, oh, fine. Smart girl. All of a sudden I get the needle out. I think it'll be fine, I'm just looking. Okay, fine, you can look at my hand all day you want. You know, we're looking. As soon as I get the needle out, boom, same reaction. Just every single time you get close to her with the needle, she has the fear of the needle. That hurts. 4-year-olds know that hurts. Why do you die of an opiate overdose? What's the physiology behind it? The physiology is this. All opiates cause you to breathe less. The process of the opiates entering into your body makes you feel less pain. It also prevents you from breathing. It's all dose dependent. In the operating room, if I give you 5 cc's of fentanyl, you won't breathe. If I give you 1 cc of fentanyl, you'll feel minimal pain. It's just a good thing we got a ventilator in the operating room, so when I give 5 cc's of fentanyl, then you won't quit breathing and everything will be fine. If you want to not have the ventilator and have the pain relief, you got to kind of run that edge pretty close. In the hospital, we have this great, wonderful drug called Narcan. Narcan, I can't snap with that hand, immediately reverses the respiratory depressant effects of fentanyl, Dilaudid, morphine, Oxycontin, all that stuff. So there's this resident, when I was in Iowa, University of Iowa, there's a resident, good guy, bright guy. He injured his shoulder. He had, he was a weightlifter, you know, he's kind of, you know, tough guy. And he was given the prescription Ultram. It's supposed to be non-addictive pain relief. So he takes it for a while, realizes after a month, wow, I'm kind of addicted to this stuff. This is not good. So then 6 months, he's still on the stuff, and then it's like, doc's like, hey, you're done, man. Shoulder's better. You're done with this. Enough Ultram. So obviously he's in the OR every single day, has access to all the wonderful drugs. And so, Ultram is good, made me feel good, it makes me feel normal by 6 months. The jump to injecting yourself with opiates is a big jump. He talks about that. Fast forward the clock, 30 days. The average time anesthesiologist injects narcotics in their arm and they're dead is 30 days. It's that fast, that addicting, that powerful. He's in the operating room, he's addicted. He has a terrible headache. Terrible headache. Can't figure out why he's got a headache. He counts his respiratory rate. It's 2. How many times do you breathe a minute? 20?
Yeah.
His was 2. He's doing his anesthetic. He's putting his patient to sleep. His respiratory rate is 2. Maybe there is something to this. You're the breath inside of me. You're the air I breathe. Maybe there is something to that. This drug Narcan. Is Narcan the drug that we need? Narcan reverses the effects of opiates like that. Let's just create another little metaphor. Let's just say that Christ is the Narcan. He's the air we breathe. He immediately reverses the toxic effects of the narcotics. Revelation 3:20. I stand in the door and I knock. There's no walls. There's no prison. There's nothing. In fact, in San Francisco, they spent $1.5 billion in the last 10 years to try to fix that problem. They have relocated 6,500 homeless people to houses in the suburbs. They've paid for them. They've paid for free health care. They've given them clothes. They've given them food. They've given them shelters. In 2004, there's 6,500 homeless in the city of San Francisco. In 2014, there's 6,800 homeless. Don't they see? They get a new house. They get a new, they get clothes. Can't they just be happy? The walls are not real. There's a hot shower. There's warm food. There's a banquet table, as long as you can see, just waiting for you. There's a haircut. There's a shave. Come in. Come in off the street. Come in. As for you, you were dead. This is Ephesians 2, 1 through 10. As you were dead in your transgressions. You used to be alive when you followed the ways of the world, and you were the ruler of the kingdom of the air. The Spirit is now at work in those who are disobedient. All of us lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh, following the desires of our thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. God made us alive with Christ, even though we were dead with our transgressions. It is by grace you have been saved. God raised us up with Christ and seated us in His heavenly kingdom. So maybe it is true. Maybe those metaphors are true. You got two options. This is the lobby of the hotel that I was at last week. The Park Central Hotel in downtown San Francisco. You walk out of here. This is the lobby. The rooms are right back through that door. Concierge desk there. The drive up is right over here. Literally, you walk out of this, down the block, half of a block, and there's 4 homeless people. Needles, syringes, you name it. You got two choices, that or this. There's no walls, there's no bars, there's nothing preventing us. Why don't we do it? Why aren't we there? So let's just imagine that that is us. We're walking through the lobby. We want a room. We're homeless, we're dirty, we're ugly. Concierge desk says, yeah, we've been waiting for you. For years we've been waiting for you. We're so excited that you're here. You go upstairs to room, I don't know, 1236. You get a shower, you get shaved, you get a haircut, you get a nice clothes on. I said, come down, come down. Okay, I'm coming. I have something for you. I have something for you. The laundry's been working hard. We got a lot, brand new white robes just for you. Wow, that sounds awesome. A white robe just for me? What does that do? Seat at the table. I'm there. No, we're not there. We would rather wallow in our own filth. We would rather be in our own, we're in our own world. We want to make our own decisions. John 3:19, this is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people love darkness instead of the light because their deeds are evil. The prison doors are open. The invitation is real. The hope is real. And still, we choose not to. So, back to our text for this morning. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hear my voice and opens the door, I will come into him, dine with him, and he with me. So are the metaphors real? Yeah, I think they are. They may not be real today, but they will be real. I want to sit at the table with the white robe with Christ. I want to sit by his side. I want to be in that banquet hall with him.